Hello and welcome to the Strategies for Supporting Your Child's Learning at Home. I'm Stacy Rulison, and I'm a consultant with the Michigan Department of Education, Office of Special Education, and support the Michigan Alliance for Families. I'm a board certified behavior analyst and licensed behavior analyst and work clinically with young adults and teens in improving social, adaptive, and living skills. And I've worked clinically in the past with young children, elementary age children in homes and clinics and schools. And I also have a 15-year-old with autism spectrum disorder. So he's a young adult. And I'm the parent representative on the Michigan Autism Council and serve on a number of committees and work groups related to improving lives of individuals with disabilities.
And hi, I'm Stephanie Dyer. I'm a school psychologist by training. I have worked in urban and rural districts around the state of Michigan. I've also worked as a special ed administrator, an autism coordinator, and a behavior specialist. As with Stacy, I've also sat on a number of committees at the state level around young children as well as autism spectrum disorders. I currently work for Michigan's MTSS, Multi-Tiered System of Support Technical Assistance Center, which is a state and federally funded project to help ISDs and local school districts implement a multi-tiered system of support to improve student outcomes in behavior and learning. I also work part-time with the Michigan Department of Education grant called START, which is the statewide autism resources and training project.
So good. So getting started today, we'd like to do a couple of acknowledgements. First of all, we'd like to acknowledge Michigan Alliance for Families. Michigan Alliance for Families is Michigan's parent training center, and it's comprised of parent mentors throughout the state that support families related to special education topics. There are parent mentors throughout Michigan that take calls and emails and help guide families through special education questions and issues. And Michigan Alliance has an amazing website with a plethora of information that is open to just on a lot of special education topics. They also have a very informative YouTube channel that has amazing videos related to almost every special education topic you can imagine. So this video will be posted up to the YouTube channel for Michigan Alliance for Families after. Also, I'd like to acknowledge the Michigan My MTSS organization that Stephanie mentioned earlier. And we'd like to do a shout out to all educators, administrators, and staff returning to school this fall. In these really uncertain times, we know it hasn't been easy getting things shaped up for re-entry to school. And of course, all the families and students that are returning to school this fall and their efforts to align with whatever context their learning environment might be. So we have a few objectives established for today's webinar. So we hope to increase your understanding of positive behavioral interventions and supports, and Stephanie will talk more about that in a few minutes. Also for preparing in that transition back to school, and hopefully through some strategies in the discussion today, you'll have some things that you can apply in making that more successful. Also to increase your understanding of routines and creating routines and developing them and why routines are important in that transition process. Also understanding resources to help set up routines. So we'll be talking about a lot of resources that you'll have access to after the webinar. And then finally, to increase your understanding of communication with schools and to help with instructional needs at home and then connecting with those schools and bridging. So we'll talk more about that in a few minutes too. So just quickly, the agenda, we're going to talk about returning to school. Stephanie will do the PBIS overview. And again, the purpose, types, development, and use of routines. We'll then have a call to action for families and give them some next steps as far as developing routines. And then we'll talk about the resources briefly that we've alluded to today in the seminar. And then we'll have a very brief survey at the end that we'd like you to fill out. So as far as questions and answers, there's a Q&A box feature at the bottom of the screen or in your toolbar for Zoom. If you have questions and answers, or questions, please put them in that feature, and we will try to get to them at the end. If we have time, we'll be able to maybe answer one or two, but otherwise we'll do a frequently asked questions and send that out with the material after the presentation today. So we'll be sending out a PDF or a file of the PowerPoint. We'll have some resources we're sending out, and then also the questions and answers. So what does back to school mean this year? So it's been kind of a trying 6 or 7 months here. So it's going to mean different things to different families and to children. So your child might be attending school face-to-face in a classroom type setting where there are likely many changes to the environment. There may be masking requirements, there may be social distancing requirements with teachers and peers. Going to lunch might look like a lot different than ever before. They may be served lunch in classrooms. They may have to go to a cafeteria and have assigned seating or specific areas that they set to eat lunch. Transportation might look fully different with pickup times and drop-off times, seating on buses, distancing on buses, and also hygiene requirements. I mean, schools always have hand sanitizer and requirements at school, but it's going to be really amped up this year, as many know, and that hand washing and keeping our hands away from our faces and not touching other people is going to be really, really important. And this can be a big change for a lot of students. So in schools offering face-to-face have made a lot of accommodations in keeping children safe and really providing the best academic environment under the circumstances. And some students will do their learning at home. So they won't be returning to a home or to a school environment and not spending time in classes at a school building. So classes may be streamed from a classroom, or teachers may have small groups and have classes that way. There may be small groups or large group of peers. This is going to look different depending on the school system and the age of the child and how that school operates. It may be a combination of both, school or in school and online education. So those possibilities are different. And what we do know is that this can be a very difficult time for transition for our students. So, and we just can't stress really enough the importance of keeping those lines of communication open between the school and the parents. And this is true for all children, but for our kids with individualized education programs or IEPs or on 504 plans, they may have greater support needs. And children may have difficulty with those transitions back in the learning environment, the physical requirements that are there, the material itself. Educators are likely to reach out to parents, and it's really important to understand how important that two-way or bi-directional communication is, and understanding that you as parents can reach out to them. You are an expert in your child, and parents are expert always in their children, and they have a lot of expertise, but educators have a ton of expertise and may be able to help set up that environment, whatever that might be for greater learning. So we're going to talk about communication a little bit more in a few minutes here.
All right, thanks, Stacy. So with thinking about getting ready to return to school and thinking about how to set your children and yourselves up for success, let's talk for a minute about positive behavioral interventions and supports, or PBIS. And you've probably heard of PBIS through your child's school or in other resources, or an educator in schools you work in, and you may or may not have a good understanding of what it is. Often a common misunderstanding of PBIS that we come across is that it's simply giving out students stickers or tickets or rewards of some kind. And while acknowledging students for positive behaviors is definitely a part of it, PBIS is much more than that. So what is it? First and foremost, it's an evidence-based framework that focuses on prevention and teaching. This is key. We focus on preventing challenging behaviors from occurring in the first place, and we teach children and students new skills and expected behavior. And the expected behaviors could vary and be different from school to school or from home to home. PBIS includes what we call systems change. So in schools, implementation of PBIS is often school-wide. So it includes setting up the whole school environment so kids are successful by establishing a safe, predictive, and predictable, and supportive environment. The same can be done in our homes, and we're going to be talking about this today. Because PBIS is about prevention, it's proactive versus reactive. So we want to prevent or minimize behavior challenges rather than try to fix them or stop them after they occur. We know that preventing challenging behavior is way more effective than punishment after the fact, right? The PBIS framework is also considered a tiered system of support for all students. So you may have heard of Tier 1, Tier 2, Tier 3. And in a nutshell, Tier 1 is instruction and supports that are provided to everyone, to all students. Tier 2 interventions are those interventions provided to small groups of students who have common needs who need a little more support. Basically, Tier 3 then is that intensive level of support for individual students. And this framework provides a way for student needs to be met. Lastly, in the framework, decisions are made based on data and outcomes, not just by our gut feelings or what we think about how it's going. So let me give you an example of what all this can look like in a home, and I'll use my own home. So back when my son was in kindergarten, honestly, our mornings were a mess. I was trying to get myself ready, my husband was trying to get ready, and our son was struggling to get ready, and I was just sort of nagging him along. And he would cry, and I would be frustrated, and it was just not good. And so we all started our days off with stress and crabby moods, and we did not set ourselves up for success at all. So we needed to do something different, clearly. So we made a list of steps that we needed to add into the morning routine. And then I created, since my son was just in kindergarten, I created a visual schedule for him with all of those things in the morning that he needed to do independently. And I taught him how to use it, and also made sure that he could do all those things independently. When he finished his schedule, then he could play or he could watch TV, and we had some predetermined things he could do. So my data was the time it took him to be ready for school. And I noticed that as we were using this routine and this schedule, he was getting ready kind of earlier and earlier, which answered my question, is this working? Yes, it was. Also, I noticed I was prompting him less, AKA nagging him less. And that was also a sign, a database sign that it was working. So if things hadn't been working, we would have needed to do something different. So this alone changed our mornings by preventing the arguments and preventing my nagging and proactively setting us all up to have successful days. So we want to take just a minute before we go on and give you a look at what this can look like at home. What does PBIS in the home look like? So we're going to take a peek at the short video and then we'll come back and go from there. Okay.
Positive behavior support at home. Positive behavior support is an effective, evidence-based approach for children of all ages and those with and without disabilities.
Good job.
It promotes a proactive approach to create, teach, and reinforce family-wide expectations and routines to prevent challenging behavior and support positive communication and relationships in the home.
Would you please pass the potatoes?
You're welcome.
The foundation of this three-tiered approach is teaching children clear expectations and setting up predictable routines. This approach emphasizes a continuum of behavior support, taking into consideration the unique needs of each family member. The family works together to identify what behaviors are acceptable and unacceptable at home.
So these are our home rules. They're be safe.
This can be as simple as making a list of home rules that align with any expectations for behavior at school.
Put things where they belong.
Families should proactively teach and support these expectations with daily routines.
Hey, thanks for cleaning your dishes and putting them in the dishwasher. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Positive behavior support can be as simple as noticing positive behavior and saying something about it.
What are you working on?
We have to make a presentation in science next week. I'm making a glider for mine.
Looks like you're working really hard on that. Good job, kiddo.
Thanks, Dad.
Giving encouragement doesn't just make children feel good. It's also the most effective way to teach positive behavior.
Good job, buddy.
Children also benefit from predictable routines. Routines provide stability and teach children the life skills they need to be independent and successful. A family can be proactive in this by modeling and teaching routines like chores, homework, and bedtime.
So here are the steps in your bedtime routine. Take a bath, brush your teeth, put on your PJs, put your clothes out for the next day, and in bed by 8:15. If you follow all these steps, you get 10 minutes of extra story time.
Okay.
The foundation of positive behavior support creates a positive home environment where children know what the expectations and routines are.
We finished all the steps, and it's before 8:15, so now you get 10 minutes of extra story time. Which book do you want to read?
When challenging behavior happens, even when good, proactive, and reinforcement strategies are part of the plan, the positive behavior support approach guides parents to respond in ways that offer to help the child get back on track by using positive behavior, or taking a break away from the situation and avoiding power struggles.
What happened?
It slipped out of my hand.
Positive behavior support emphasizes teaching better behavior even in difficult moments and diffusing conflicts before they escalate.
It's all right. It's just a glass. I'll help you clean it up.
For most children, this works, but some families or family members need more support and interventions.
Hey,
This is
if you
known
need
as
a break,
Tier 2.
you can use your words nicely to ask me.
It's important for the family to reflect and discuss what might be the need behind the behavior. Is the child trying to get attention from a parent, avoid a task, trying to get access to screen time? But there will still be some families or family members who need more intensive interventions at home. Tier 3 is where function-based, comprehensive, individualized supports are necessary. Families at this point will likely coordinate with professionals like board-certified behavior analysts to do a functional behavior assessment and then create a positive behavior support plan to implement in the home. An FBA helps to understand the purpose or function of a challenging behavior. This collaborative process will include assessment of the problem behavior across settings, for example, problems getting out the door calmly in the morning or challenges at bedtime. Identify replacement behaviors, like trying to determine if the child is trying to get something like attention or avoiding bedtime or homework. Comprehensive interventions to prevent and address challenging behavior, such as providing choices, learning breathing strategies, or a social story for bedtime. And data-based decision tools to track how long a tantrum lasts or how many times they use their words to ask for help. These tools are used to determine the effectiveness of the plan. There are many types of approaches to using positive behavior support in home, school, and community settings. It's important to find the type of implementation that works best for your family and supports the needs and well-being of all involved.
Okay. We get. Okay. So you could see some of these foundations of PBIS in the video. Again, there's an emphasis on prevention of behavior by changing the environment to set our kids up for success. And one way we do this is through establishing routines and expectations. And we're going to be talking about the routines today through the rest of the webinar. We also encourage socially appropriate and desired behavior through actually teaching the behavior we want to see, rather than just expecting kids to know better, and then actually practicing that expected behavior so we get fluent with it. Then we recognize and reward kids for doing it correctly, you know, like, awesome job being responsible by logging off the computer when the timer went off. Well done. And we're going to talk about that aspect in another webinar in the series. And lastly, when challenging behavior does occur, we work on ways to reduce it or to teach a new behavior to replace it. So you might be asking, why so much focus on prevention? And it's because we can prevent many behaviors by altering or changing the environment. And when I say that, sometimes I've heard people say, well, that's not the real world. And actually, the real world does set us up for success many times and in many ways, but we don't often realize it. Here's an example from my bank. So I took a screenshot of the ATM I was at. Before they changed their ATMs, I often left my card in the ATM and I drove away without getting my card, causing me to have to first realize that I had left it in the machine. Often I realized that much later. And then I'd have to go back and ask them to go in and get it out. So I hope other people have done that as well. Rather than charge a fee for every time they had to climb back in and get ATM cards for people, what Fifth Third did is they changed the environment. They changed their machines to prevent this from occurring. Now you first have to take your card out before you get your cash. And I don't think anyone is going to drive away without their cash. So this is very successful. Here is our webinar series in which we're going to be talking about these foundations of PBIS and how they can be applied at home. Today, we're going to talk about how to prevent challenging behavior through the development of routines. On September 2nd, we're going to be continuing our discussion on prevention of behavior through how to develop expectations and rules at home and how to teach and practice those expectations. That will create a safe, predictable, and supportive environment that helps our kids to thrive. And on webinar 3 on September 16th, we're going to cover how to reinforce the expected behavior through teaching, reminding, and rewarding. We will also discuss if and when challenging behavior does occur, how to correct it, how to reduce it, or how to replace it with more appropriate behavior. So starting today, today's webinar is about the development of routines. So recall that Tier 1 is a level of support that's available to everyone. So establishing routines in your home can prevent behavior for everyone in your home. And it goes a long way toward creating that safe, predictable, and supportive environment. So we can't be interactive in this format, but just think, what types of routines do you currently have for yourself? For you, maybe you have a morning routine, like you wake up, you get your coffee, you get dressed, wake your kids up, make breakfast. Maybe some of you have nice cleaning routines, like I do my laundry on Saturday and my bathroom's on Monday. Maybe workout routines. How about routines for everyone in your home? What do you have there? Sometimes people have meal routines, like one person's gonna set the table, one person's gonna clear it and load the dishwasher, do the dishes. You have routines for chores. Some people have pet care routines, bath shower routines. So many routines are possible. Now, think about where you do not have routines. I'll be honest, now that it's just my husband and I at home most of the time, I do not have a very tight morning routine, especially now that we are doing a lot remotely. Also, I do not have a good workout routine. It's just pretty hit and miss, and lately it's more miss. So what is the difference between having and not having routines? I don't know about you, but I find that things are smoother and more efficient where I do have those routines. I'm pretty chaotic and unsettling where I don't. In fact, where I don't have routines, it all often makes me feel like I'm inefficient and actually a little bit anxious. So routines can be created for just about any activity, including things around learning, exercise, self-care, etc. And right now, it seems like in many of our homes, a long day with a lot of unstructured time does feel overwhelming. Routines can help break the day up into manageable chunks and provide some structure. So why routines? Before we get into the how to do it, let's talk about why they're so important. First, they provide structure and predictability and consistency. And predictability creates that sense of safety and support for kids and for us, especially in uncertain, unpredictable, ever-changing times like we're currently living in. Most children, most people thrive when we have some routine and structure. Routine also creates or reduces anxiety and stress by having, again, that predictability and structure that I just mentioned. When school is not in session, or when school is back in session, but might be changing from virtual to in-person to virtual, our kids likely have fewer routines. We all probably will have fewer routines in that situation, which alone can increase anxiety and challenging behaviors. And lastly, another reason that routines are so important is that they become the manager of behavior, not you as parents and family members, not you as teachers or professionals. Once kids learn a routine, the routine guides the way. It just becomes the way we do business, and it gets automatic over time. And having children actively involved in the routine, being doers of the routine, helps them incorporate those behaviors into their repertoire.
So Stephanie already mentioned some of the routines that you might already have in your home. And this is going to be different from household to household and based on your own family dynamic. So routines can and do change over time. They may be long-term or short-term. Most families have some form of a morning routine, especially if you have children at home. That might involve waking up at a certain time, brushing our teeth, getting cleaned up, taking medication possibly, preparing a backpack or lunch, getting shoes and getting coats, getting a schedule, marking things off a checklist or a calendar. And this is just a list of some common routines that families have at home. It could be, you might have a routine for riding in a car, homework, chores, meals, and bedtime. Hygiene and masking may be another routine that you've added given the current state of affairs. So next, we'll talk about supporting routines with visual supports. So visuals or visual supports help support routines and we often refer to them just as visuals. We use this strategy to accomplish or to prompt or cue something. We can teach skills by using visuals, and as Stephanie mentioned, visuals can help in a big way prevent unwanted behaviors from cropping up. It makes the environment more predictable, and so the child knows what to expect, when to expect it, and where. Visuals can also help with two-way and purposeful communication. So we call this functional communication, or communicating with a purpose, or in a way that fits the situation. So I have an example from the past with a little girl that I worked with. She was about 6 years old, and this just demonstrates functional communication, I guess initially the lack thereof, and how we work with that. But she had minimal language, and I was working in their home, and I would be talking to her mother. So the first week I was there, I would be talking to her mother, and she would come up and say, "The monkey's on the box, the monkey's on the box." And her mother would stop talking to me and turn to her and attend to her and she'd get her need met, and it would be done. So after this happened a few times, I asked her mother, do you suppose that when she says the monkey's on the box at school, that the teachers know what that means? And she's like, absolutely not. And I said, let's go ahead and teach her a more functional way then to interrupt, because she was clearly interrupting to get her mother's attention, to get a need met. So we were able to teach her, excuse me, please. And she was able to then more appropriately interrupt and have her need met that way. So that was purely for the purpose of demonstrating functional communication, but so important. And visuals and can help so greatly with the two-way communication, and especially as it relates to routines. So using visual supports can help, with communication with parents, with educators, and others. This approach works well with children with and without disabilities, and is often used in classrooms, as Stephanie mentioned, and in homes too. So using visuals can aid a child with communication or regulation challenges. It can help give them a sense of control. We can offer choices with visuals. And really importantly, it promotes independence. And I know Stephanie mentioned this earlier too, but we're not continually instructing the child saying, go get your toothbrush, go brush your teeth. Oh, now you got to rinse your mouth. I mean, so this gives them some sequence and ability to manage themselves. So, and really, the more we can promote that independence and less reliance on other people for direction, the better quality of life our children are going to have making these independent choices and being able to live more independently. So visuals help reduce a child's anxiety by allowing consistency and preparing for activities and transitions and unplanned activities and non-preferred activities. So visuals should also, then this is really important, should be age and ability appropriate. So, and this changes over time, and we're going to talk more about this. And the one thing I did want to mention too, and Steph mentioned this too, is that we know visual supports strategies can be very useful across the age span based on years and years of repeated research and quality research, showing that this approach works in schools and homes and in the community. And it's used by teachers and families and individuals. So it functions across the board, that it's used clinically in education and in homes. So let's talk for a minute about the types of visual supports. Some include schedules or checklists or social narratives. And so those are some examples of types. There are also different forms of visuals that include pictures and text and drawings and objects and written words and lists and many others. Some children use the picture exchange communication, and some of you may have heard of that or use that, called PECS. For their communication. And this involves mainly using visuals to communicate through physical pictures or often through assistive technology, through like an electronic iPad or phone or tablet. And these types of schedules, again, provide predictability, consistency, and often moves through a routine from beginning to end. So we're going to talk about some types and forms of visual supports here on the upcoming slides. But before we do that, we wanted to take a poll from you as to what visuals you use to support yourself. So everybody uses them, and we just wanted to get an idea. So check all that apply in the poll that's been presented. And we'll give you just a minute to do this.
Lots of calendars, lots of checklists, lots of to-do lists.
I feel like we need music.
I know.
So calendars, yes, everyone uses calendars in some form, and some of us still use some of the paper calendars. And I honestly don't know what I do without my to-do list on a daily basis. So as adults, as functioning individuals, we use these types of visual supports daily in our lives to make our lives easier and more efficient and more predictable. So thank you for taking that poll. So we looked at an overview of different types of visuals, and we'll talk more now about it in depth about those. So when we're using visuals, the goal is for the activity to become part of a reoccurring activity or part of our daily living, and much like a habit. It really is important to think about, again, the age and interest of the child when you're creating visual supports and keeping that visual engaging for the child, especially for routines that are part of their daily living. The behaviors often become part of a habit and then part of the day. We'll also talk about one of the upcoming webinars about fading supports and when appropriate, fading back some of the visuals we might use. And fading is when we reduce the visual or reduce that prompt, so the child can become more dependent in learning the skill and their own behavior. So note that visuals can be created in a number of ways, which includes electronically on the computer or on a laptop, and they can be physical, like construction paper, colored paper, poster board. Many times people laminate visuals so they can be reused, which is a great option. And not everybody needs a laminator. You can go to Staples and have something laminated, but this enables us to reuse, like checklists, for example. So information can easily be erased. So you can see that this would be useful on the samples that I provided here. And these are just a couple different types of schedules. This first one where it's a morning schedule where it's paired with a picture and some very simple words. And then I've got another one that's more on the right there that's more, a little bit the individual would probably have a few more literacy skills, maybe a little older individual. And then there's another morning schedule at the bottom. And then, okay, so now we're going to move to areas of interest. Using areas of interest on a visual can be extremely motivating for a child. The visual itself can become reinforcing. And when we talk about rewarding or reinforcing, we're doing something that motivates that child to do something repeatedly, to repeat that behavior and do it again and again. If they're motivated to use the visual, then it's likely that they'll engage with it and they'll do the activity on the visual and what you want them to do. This is why it's really important to incorporate high interest activities as part of the strategy. So using high interest areas can work for younger children, elementary age, teens, young adults. For older children, think about television shows, games, things they'd like to do, or activities they might enjoy outside. It's also important to take checkpoints to make sure that they're still really interested in the areas of interest, because they change. And they can also just mean maybe mixing up the pictures or trying something new. Remember, if they have open access to something that you're using as a high interest area on a visual to reinforce them, they can get tired of it, and that we call that satiated on it. So it may no longer be of interest to them. So it may require picking out different pictures or kind of shaking it up, like a child that might have been interested in Mickey Mouse at one time, maybe on to SpongeBob. So we need to make sure and make changes to what we're using for high interest area. So in giving them options too, do you want Mickey Mouse or do you want SpongeBob? And let them have options and choose where they have onus in the process. And again, they're more likely to engage with it if they have some ownership of it. So on this next slide, we have a couple visual examples. So on the left, would be for a younger child. And again, it's paired with pictures and very simple language. And then we have embedded in this maybe a visual within a visual, because we have a timer where I brush my teeth for 2 minutes, and I circled it because then maybe we let the child set the timer and again have a part of that process. So on the right side is actually, this is a schedule I developed for a boy that I worked with that loves SpongeBob. So initially I gave him two choices of SpongeBob or just a toothbrush. And of course he picked SpongeBob. And I gave two choices because if we get much over two, it can become overwhelming. So I did a highly preferred, which is SpongeBob, and one maybe that wasn't so preferred, just being the toothbrush. So then I just kind of built SpongeBob into all of the schedule. And then I started drawing back and fading a little bit. So on number one, I get my blank. And so he has to fill in toothbrush, and I've got the picture, of course, of SpongeBob. So in this case, we kept fading the visual. And eventually we got, we took off the 2 for 2 minutes, and eventually he didn't need the visuals at all. He became completely independent. And again, that's the goal. And is it the end of the world if somebody needs a visual to help do? No, we all use visuals. But in this case, this is not a visual that he's going to need to do this daily activity that is part of his hygiene routine. So, and the nice thing about some of these is that they can be put in a bathroom and right next to where they might brush their teeth. So, so these are just a couple of examples. So, and then this visual, this is a social narrative, and sometimes these are called social stories. So they're used to support routines and teach academics, describe expectations, and a lot of times we use them to define expectations and prevent behaviors for a certain activity. So we use pictures in very, very simple language, typically, something that's meaningful to the child. So we're not going to do a social story on something completely unrelated to what we would want the child to do. They're always written in first person. So it's from the standpoint of the viewpoint of the child. And then we look at kind of framing it around the 5 W's of who, what, where, when, why, and how. So on the right is a social narrative that I had created for Sparrow Hospital. I'd worked with some nurses there. They had some children that were having a really hard time doing procedures in their gastro area, and especially around using IVs. So we were able to develop the social narrative. And again, it's a mix of pictures and there's some clip art. I personally love pictures. And now that we have digital capability, it makes it more real. And that's not to say if clip art works, that's great too. But a lot of times if we can put children in the picture, seeing themselves being successful at doing something, it bears a lot of weight. So I love to use real pictures, and especially pictures of the individual. In this case, we had some pictures of the hospital, and then going through the various procedures. And this is written at a higher level, but it could easily be scaled down. And again, the pictures make it more salient, and it can be a combination of pictures and clip art. And this should really be spread out over a few pages. This is for demonstration purposes. Since I consolidated it, but this would be far too busy and overwhelming for most children. So they spread it out over 3 to 5 pages, but they indicated it was extremely effective for the individuals or the children they had coming through that they needed to use it with. And they've got different pictures, and they use them to create their own social stories. So anyway, this is just an example of a social narrative, but very, very powerful tool using visuals. So I'd like to switch gears just for a second here and talk about siblings as far as engaging siblings in routines. Having siblings at home can be very helpful in modeling expected behaviors and encouraging new skills related to routines. When we talk about modeling, that means showing the child how to do something and then having them try it. So siblings often do just a great job with this naturally anyway, and we consider siblings kind of a natural support because they occur in the natural environment for the child. They have established and trusting relationships with siblings, and they're often emulate what their brother or sister is doing. So we encourage this as a way to build new routine. So for example, a sibling may go to a morning schedule and say, I'm going to check the morning schedule. Oh, I see it's time for breakfast. And while pointing at the picture, and then they go get breakfast. This could be a way to prompt the sibling along and say, now it's your turn, and praise the sibling then when they are following along. And parents can do this too. So they can prompt saying, see what your sister Sarah's doing? She's getting her breakfast, and pointing to the schedule. So there's ways that even parents can incorporate the sibling and using the sibling as a model. So, as I discussed, having siblings involved is a great way to involve them in building routines. This is not to say that we would expect a sibling to be responsible for teaching or intervention itself. The idea is to be very natural, and the interaction should be very natural. And with any children that we are working to get into routines, sometimes the sibling can benefit themselves, right? If we're trying to teach a new routine, I'm thinking in some of the homework routines and some of the learning at home routines, by siblings helping reinforce that routine, they themselves can be more adept at the routine. So it gives lots of verbal praise to the sibling for great modeling, and just be reinforcing as far as them being a great role model.
All right, so Stacy gave you lots of great ideas for how to incorporate visual supports into routines to help prompt those routines, to help teach those routines, and again, kind of serve as that reminder for students and for children at home. So you might be sitting there thinking, I have so many routines in my house that I could put into place. Like, where do I even start? So here's some ideas. Again, we want to pick something and do it well. So here's just some considerations for how to get started. One is start simple. Think about what's already going well in your home and build on that. So maybe, for example, breakfast time is really pretty smooth. What are the steps in breakfast that just seem to naturally occur? Write those down. Write those down with your family into your routine, and celebrate that you successfully run that routine each morning. Then you can add on additional steps to the routine, maybe now adding a cleaning up from breakfast onto that, or move on to other routines. Secondly is think about the times of the day that you dread, that just cause challenges, and so you just sort of find yourself dreading those times. It could be the getting ready in the morning. It could be sitting down with your child to do math. It could be the downtime kind of between the afternoon before dinner, that sort of downtime that happens. Start with those. So for example, back in the day when I would pick my son up from daycare at the end of my workday, picking him up, transitioning back home, and getting dinner started was a really tough time of day for both of us. So that was a place where we decided, in addition to the morning routine, we were going to build a routine in there. Next, what are the times of the day that if they could be smoother, it would have a ripple effect on other parts of the day? That's a great place to start too. So maybe if the after school routine was established, you know, homework, snack, free time, etc., if that was going really well, the rest of the evening would be smoother. So that'd be a great place to start. Couple more ideas. One is, are there routines that would be the same, just used multiple times throughout the day? Like meal routines. Perhaps you have 2 or 3 times where you basically have the same routine, just depending on the meal. Or maybe picking up and getting out toys or materials. Start with those. Those give you the biggest bang for the buck. You're teaching one routine and you can use it multiple times. And then lastly, because both Stacy and I have mentioned this, where and what do you find yourself continually prompting your child? So again, thinking back to my awful mornings when my son was in kindergarten and my constant nagging, AKA prompting, Hayden, did you brush your teeth? Hayden, did you get your socks on? Hayden, do you have your shoes on? Hayden, did you put a snack in your backpack? Turn that into a routine and let the routine manage the behavior, not you. So Stacy and I want to go ahead and model creating an after-school routine. So I'm going to clear this for a second. And we're going to go ahead and model what it would look like to start building a routine. So in this example, we're going to pretend that in Stacy's home, she's having a really challenging time once kids, her 2 sons, are done logging off their virtual class in the afternoon. She's having to navigate arguments between her sons and prompt them, you know, to continually to do things. They're all getting crabby. It's just not a good part of the day. It's part of the day she dreads. So this is a part of the reason why this would be a good routine to start with. So we can develop a routine. So Stacy, what do you want the boys to do after they finish their online classes in the afternoon?
I want them to complete their homework that they need to do and probably have a snack in there and to tide them over until they have dinner. I want them to clean up the materials and I guess then probably have some free time.
Okay. So do you want it in that order?
Well, maybe they can have a snack right after class is done and then get going on their homework.
Okay. Okay. Anything else?
You know, maybe they can have a little free time, like 15 minutes or so with a snack and then get to the homework. They'll need a timer for the 15 minutes because I don't think they'll remember.
For the free time?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Let's just say set it. Let's tell them what to do. Set timer. Okay. So like this?
Yeah, that's perfect.
Okay. So is there anything within cleanup materials? Are there any specific steps that you would want to build in there to help just make that more clear?
I think logging off the computer, putting papers in the folder in the desk drawer and putting things away.
Okay, how does that look?
Looks great. I think that could work.
Okay, so see, now we have an after-school routine for times when school is online. And we can also develop one for after school when school is in person too. And now Stacy can spend some time putting this in a visual way that works for her boys. And she can spend some time teaching and practicing that with them. And then that will become the manager of what they're doing rather than her. Okay, pop this back up.
Okay, so this is, now it's your turn. So this is kind of your call to action. So for setting up a schedule based on the strategies we discussed. So some of you may already have experience doing this and maybe we can then expand what you're already doing. So think about what routine you would like to set up or expand in your home for returning to school. So some ideas are academic goals, things you need to have done at home related to those academics, or activities that need to be done. So create a schedule or checklist, remembering to number 1, think about your child's age and ability. Think about what motivates your child and if you can build in any of your child's interest areas to help motivate them to use that routine and schedule. And think about incorporating peers or siblings and people that are right in the environment the child is in already. And on the next page, there's a couple of activity samples. So you'll be receiving these after the webinar. And these are just examples. So on the left, it's a child getting ready to go to face-to-face instruction. So it kind of goes through waking up and what the child has to do during the day or during the morning to get ready to go. And on the right, it's for a child that has stronger literacy skills and maybe a little older child. We still kept the pictures in. And again, I think you can have the child involved in this process and picking up pictures and even their pictures in the schedule. So, and then we also will be sending a blank template that you can download and you can write on, or you can create your own schedule that way. But these are samples that you could follow for academics. So, and then finally, we just wanted to touch on communication with the school team. And I alluded to this earlier, but two-way communication, again, is just always essential for educators and families, but particularly as we approach this coming year. This means communication will flow from the parent to the educator and the educator back to the parent. We know that effective communication requires knowing who to talk to, how to best communicate with educators, and educators need to know how to best communicate with you as parents. So the family needs to make sure that they let the teams know how they would prefer being communicated with. Is it text? Is it email? Is it phone? Is it some other source of communication? So that, again, that two-way communication is really important. If there's a school team supporting your child who has an IEP, for example, and there's a primary contact that you typically work with, find out what that communication mechanism is. Parents also can interact directly with teachers and pose clarifying questions and ask help from them. In addition, additional support is needed, ask. That's what teachers, they're there to help. And they can engage other people as necessary. So educators have a great deal of knowledge and can help parents set up the child's learning for more success at home. They can communicate with how the child is supported at school and how those routines were used at school, how they were reinforced in school, and the systems that are familiar already to the child. So we may be able to replicate that in the home. So for example, if they have routines for beginning the school day, which could be used at home, such as a schedule, we might be able to use some of those things in setting up a morning routine at home too. So it's just really important that the teachers and also invite parents to engage, making it easier for families to reach out and be approachable. So it's vital that parents feel that if they need assistance, that they can go to those educators and that they'll be welcome. So if parents have questions on curriculum or assignments or need help with supports or behaviors, again, knowing they have that resources is pretty critical. So be proactive on both sides and reach out to the school team and be open to receiving families. So next steps, we have, again, create a routine from the materials that we shared today or other resources that you might have access to. And as Steph said, start with a routine, kind of the low-hanging fruit, something that you know that they may be already doing that you can add on to. Consider the age, grade, and ability, and I've talked about that. Communicate with your child's teacher in school. I just mentioned that. When you see your child following routines, acknowledge it and, be reinforcing and great job putting away the toothpaste. That's awesome. If they make mistakes, and they will in the routine, review the routine again and practice again and be positive in the feedback and take a strength-based approach. So instead of saying, no, you missed that step, we can say, oh, we have to go back. We have to do this step first and put it just in a more positive way and let them practice again and then reinforce them with positive feedback once they do it correctly. So, and again, probably above all, that these visuals and routines can help promote independence and being self-determined and self-advocacy, which is so, so important as our children age or become young adults and into adulthood. So, and just to look at a couple of the resources that we talked about today, Michigan Alliance for Families is on the left, and they have a PBIS page. And again, a lot of information on their website. So I invite you to go take a look at that. On the right, I have the Michigan Department of Education page. A lot of COVID-19 remote learning resources for families that they have templates and things that can be implemented at home. I would suggest that go take a look at it, see if there's anything you can use. And there's also information on MTSS on that same page, and you can find more information out about that project that Stephanie is with. And then some PBIS resources that are excellent for families. The one we've referenced some of these and used some of the materials of the resources on the left, and then the video came from the Association of Positive Behavior Supports on the right, and they have a lot of other information out on their site with videos and templates and remote learning. So it's a great resource to use too. And the one that this supporting families with PBIS at home, this is kind of our guidance for this webinar series. So this is a great resource to go look at and download. They have a companion tool that's listed at the bottom. The link is provided, so you can follow along as we roll out through these webinar series. But there's a template you can actually follow with schedules and as we get to expectations and rules and things. So take a look at that. The TIE Center offers great resources for families with students with disabilities or children with disabilities. And again, video and remote learning, navigating that whole remote learning. So I'm not trying to overwhelm you with resources. These are just really, really good resources. So, and here's a list of them. And I think most of them I had pictures of or we've covered today. So, so lastly, we wanted to show you this really quick video on this visual. And we just really want to demonstrate to you that the visuals do not have to be super elaborate. That take what you have at home to set one up. In this one, we're going to see, it looks like a manila folder may be cut, and then some painter's tape, and then some pictures of the child in this bedtime routine. So it goes really quickly.
Hi guys, I wanted to show you 2 easy ways to do visual schedules at home. We use visual schedules for children that have a hard time with transitions. So this is how it works. So the first one, I just took pictures of things around the house. So this is our nighttime routine. First, we take a bath. The child takes a bath and he comes over and he goes, all done bath. Then let's see what's next. Okay, now we have to put on our pajamas. Child puts on his pajamas. All done pajamas. Now it's time to brush our teeth. Child brushes his teeth. All done brushing. All right, time for bed. We're so tired, let's go to bed. And then you go to bed. So this is nice because you can use it over and over again. It's a little interactive. The kid can open and close it. And then, but they always know what's going to happen next. So they're not surprised about what's going to happen. Another easy way is just to have pictures on the wall. First, we're going to take a bath. Child takes a bath. The child comes over here, takes the picture off the wall, and puts it in the basket. All done bath. Next, we put on lotion. Okay, all done lotion. Put it in the basket. Okay, let's put on our pajamas. The child puts on his pajamas. He comes over to the wall. All done pajamas. Time to brush our teeth. Okay, the child brushes his teeth. All done brushing teeth. And then the last thing is we go to bed. So I hope this was helpful for you guys. If you have any questions, just let me know. And I hope you guys try this at home and take care. Have a good night.
Okay. Better shut that, or I think the next video is going to play. Okay. Okay, so again, today we talked about developing routines. On September 2nd, we're going to come back and talk about how to then add on home expectations and rules and how to teach and practice those. And then on the 16th, we're going to come back and talk about how do we encourage more of the behavior we want to see through teaching, reminding, and rewarding, and how do we go about correcting, reducing, or replacing challenging behavior. So as you leave this webinar, Stacy's going to wrap us up in a minute. As you leave the webinar today, you're going to be taken directly to a survey. So if you wouldn't mind taking a second and completing that, that would be really helpful for us as we move forward with the rest of this webinar series.
So we just wanted to thank you so much for attending today, and we really look forward to the other two webinars in the series. And hopefully you've gained some knowledge and some practical tips on transitioning your child back to school this fall. So we look forward to seeing you next time.
Thank you.